Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to start this lesson off by giving all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to all the brothers who are still firmly preaching the word in sincerity and in faith. And Shalom to all the sincere believers, which includes the Israelites who are scattered amongst these other nations and now look like these other nations after being amongst them for so long and having, mixed with them and having children with them. Now this lesson is going to be based on this U.S. consulate shooting that took place. So through the Spirit, I'm going to read this quick paragraph, get some precepts, and Lord's will, you're edified. It says, Canadian police. No injuries after shots fired outside U.S. consulate in Toronto. And this could easily be a FF event, a false flag event. Esau creating this situation to try to distract people from other things that are happening, like the Steen files and the war that's going on, or the conflict, whatever you want to call it, that's happening with Iran. Whenever Esau wants to distract you from something that's more serious, he'll, cause some type of event to happen, and then in hopes that you'll focus on that instead of, the main thing that you should be focused on. So this could very well just be a distraction, or it could be serious. When it comes to Esau, you never really know. But it says Canadian police are investigating reports of two individuals driving up to the U.S. consulate in Toronto overnight and firing shots at the building. NBC News' Stephanie Gosk reports that police said they are still investigating whether the shooting was related to events in the Middle East. Police released a photo of the suspected white Honda CR-V involved. And like I said, this could be a false flag thing, because a lot of people are talking about what's happening over there in Iran. And Esau doesn't like that because, let's just keep it real, the U.S. and Israel are losing that fight. They are losing that conflict. Iran is handing them their butt on a silver platter out there. So to distract people from that, Esau would do something like this. Because let's be perfectly honest. Out there in Canada, they have fairly strict gun laws. So it really doesn't make any sense that somebody's just going to drive up to the U.S. consulate and just start shooting. That definitely seems like some distraction that Esau would cook up to get people off the topic of what's going on out there in Iran. But for the sake of, I guess, argument, let's say that somebody actually did do this because of what's happening out there in the quote-unquote Middle East. The scriptures do talk about that, about how there would be division, and basically that division would lead to sedition. There are people who out here who would do something like this because they are pissed off about what's happening. Because at the end of the day, no matter how you slice it, this war or conflict that's going on between the U.S., Israel, and Iran, it's illegal. Because Iran was having peace talks with the U.S. and Israel. Everything was going smooth, and then Israel and the U.S. attacked them. So now they're merely defending themselves, but the way that Esau is trying to paint the picture is as if the Iranians are the problem, as if they're the bad guy. And it's like, no, You attacked them first. You're the bad guy. You're the one who started this. You're the one who's committing crimes. And because a lot of people are getting on, the Trump administration and Israel for starting this illegal conflict, it doesn't surprise me that something like this would happen, whether it's a distraction or whether it's real. Just like that shooting that happened. I forget what was it, in Texas or something? I believe it was in Texas, that what everyone with common sense believes was a false flag shooting, where that guy apparently shot up a bar or a club or something in Texas, and he was wearing a Property of Allah t-shirt, and everyone's like, really? So shortly after the US and Israel start this conflict, somebody's going to do something like that. Like, this is what we're talking about when we say false flag events. When Esau knows that he's in the wrong and he's getting scrutinized for it and he's under the spotlight for it, he tries to distract people because he doesn't like that. Esau only wants you to look at him as being the good guy, the so-called white savior, and it's like, no, you're the bad guy. You've always been the bad guy. You always will be the bad guy. Nothing you do is ever going to be righteous. Nothing you ever do is going to be good. Everything Esau does is illegal and a crime and wicked in some way, shape, or form. And Esau doesn't like that basically everyone is tearing him apart right now. So he tries to distract that and give the people someone else to be mad at. But see, people have gotten a little bit smarter and, they're catching on to how Esau tries to distract them from the more serious situations at hand. So like I said, this could be one or the other. This could be a false flag event where Esau is just trying to distract everybody, or on a less likely but still possible note, it could genuinely have been somebody who did this. 2 Timothy 3:1. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. And this is leaning on the potential that somebody actually did this. Now you look up the definition of perilous, and it means full of danger or risk. And we are in those times. We are in dangerous times because there is a lot of division in this world. A lot of people are divided on the things that are happening. And that division ultimately does lead to violence. Civil wars, race wars, people attacking consulates. These sort of things do occur. And we are in that time. We are in that time of war. We are in that time of division. We are in that time of sedition amongst men. So you really can't rule anything out. Luke 12:51, suppose ye that I am come to give peace on earth? I tell you nay, but rather division. And we already know that there are a lot of people who are against what is happening out there in the quote-unquote Middle East. There's a lot of people who are not okay with that because they understand that that was illegal. That never should have happened. The U.S. and Israel had no business attacking Iran. They were at the table. There was peace talks going on. But Israel keeps saying that, oh, Iran is weeks away and months away and then months away and weeks away from having nuclear weapons, which they've been saying that for the longest time. And Iran still don't have any nuclear missiles. I believe that Israel has been saying that for like what, the past almost 50 years. So if Iran hasn't been able to create a nuclear missile in 50 years, then, there was no point in all of this. Except for ultimately, this is the will of the Lord. So this is, like it says in Exodus 15:3, the Lord Yahweh is a man of war. The Lord Yahweh is his name. So the Lord ultimately wanted this war, this conflict to take place. And also, we know that Netanyahu, which is, I believe, the prime minister of Israel, and Trump, which is the president here in the US, they're both criminals. And they know that the only way to prevent themselves from having to pay for those crimes that they've committed is their country has to be involved in war. And you see, Israel has a problem with Iran, but Iran doesn't have a problem with the US, or at least they didn't have a problem with the US. The only reason why Iran now has a problem with the US is because the US is aiding Israel and attacking them. You see, if the US had not gotten involved in it and it was just a conflict between Israel and Iran, there would be no problem. But you see, the US got involved, and they're trying to paint it as, oh, Iran was talking about death to America. They were talking about destroying America. Iran doesn't have long-range missile capabilities to hit the mainland US. They can't touch the US. So they're not a threat to the US. And Esau knows that, but he has to, in some way, justify aiding Israel. Like Esau, he's nothing but a liar. He's nothing but a liar and a snake. This is what he does. He does something, and when he gets called out for doing whatever illegal, wicked, criminal thing that he's done, he tries to spin it to make himself the good guy. But it's like, you're not the good guy. What you did was wrong and illegal and a crime, which is nothing new when it comes to these Edomites. That's all they do, is illegal, criminal things. And, obviously you're going to have people on one side of things that are going to defend it, and then you're going to have people on the other side that are against it. You see that right now heavily on TikTok. You have some people that are trying to defend, the US and Israel attacking Iran, but most people are like, no, that was wrong. That was illegal. That was a criminal move. And like I said, there's a lot more people who are against what happened than people that are for what happened. And the people who are against it are just getting angrier and angrier because they are so sick and tired of these things happening. Like, people can barely pay for gas. They can barely pay for groceries. They can barely pay their bills. There's so much more serious things happening in the US, and instead of focusing on that, the US government decides to go and start a war with somebody. So a lot of people are just very, very pissed off. And even some of America's quote unquote allies are, upset about it because they're like, listen, you're putting us in the crosshairs now. Because if Iran can't get to you, they're going to attack us because we're allies to you, and they think that we might get involved. So now you're putting a target on our back, which is a problem. And in Trump's mind, in regards to the allies, he's like, well, then just get involved, start sending your troops in. And the, these other nations, the America's allies are like, no, we're not going to do that. We don't want to be involved in this. This has nothing to do with us. Like, you're putting us in danger because you don't want to be held accountable for the crimes that you've committed in your country. So you think that committing crimes in a different country is going to change anything, But all it's doing is causing problems for everybody. And this is part of the reason why the Lord is going to set it up where even America's own allies turn against her and shooting missiles on this place. But getting back to the main point of this lesson, with this whole US consulate in Toronto being shot at, I don't really know if that's true. I think that's more of a false flag because, like I said, Canada has pretty strict gun laws. You don't just hear about people doing that sort of thing in Canada, you know? So I genuinely think that this was all set up by Esau to try to distract everybody from what's really going on. He's trying to distract people from talking about those files, and he's trying to distract people from talking about the illegal war that he started along with Israel out there with Iran, out there in the quote unquote Middle East against Iran. So this very well could just be, a false flag, just some nonsense that Esau put together. And you have to look at it from both sides. It could be genuine, but more likely is it's just a distraction. But we are in that time and season where this is actually going to be happening. People are going to start attacking government buildings and things like that because there is no talking anymore. Esau does not understand when people try to talk to him and be peaceful with him. He doesn't understand that. For the longest time, myself and other people have been saying that the only language that the so-called white man understands is violence. That's why they like being in the military. That's why they like being police officers. Because they like violence. They like shooting and murdering people. It riles them up. It gets them off. They love that stuff. So more and more people are waking up to that. And they're like, okay, well, now we're going to meet you on your turf. We're going to speak to you in the only language you understand, which is violence. So events like this will eventually be happening and they will be genuine. But I don't think this particular incident is genuine. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up here. In closing, I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, Bahashim, Rakakudash, the Wadi Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, for putting the spirit on me to do this lesson. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to all the brothers who are fervently preaching the word in sincerity and in faith. And shalom to all the sincere believers. I hope you all stay strong, stay safe, stay fervent, stay circumspect, stay prayed up. Adawan Ratazah. Till next time, shalom.